का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਆਉਣ ਲਈ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ। ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਇੱਕ ਸਬਜੈਕਟ ਤੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ about education and what do we learn about education from Gurbani. It's a new subject for me also, and I'm neither expert in Gurbani nor in education, but again, in the spirit of this session here, through discussion, we will learn from each other. And so please feel free to interrupt, ask questions. Also, you have the pads here. So if some thought comes to your mind and you don't want to interrupt, you can scribble it down and ask question later or discuss with me later. So let's go. Now, when we talk about education and we talk about Sikhs, there are a lot of stereotypes about Sikhs, about every community, and the people will say Sikhs are good farmers, Sikhs are good soldiers. People will say Sikhs are hardworking. They'll say Sikhs know how to enjoy life. But very rarely, you hear Sikhs and education together, and it's not considered something that is really a kind of characteristic of our community. I lived several years in India, in Bombay, and people will associate Bengalis with scholarship, they will associate Tamilians with scholarships, but Punjabis and Sikhs particularly Sikhs are missing from that scene, and also worldwide too. Now, a few years back, what happened was Sikh Foundation was planning to open an advanced school for children in collaboration with University at Merced, UC Merced, and UC Merced invited them to give a talk. And that's where I sort of started thinking about the subject too. And Dr. Gurbani took my son, our son Gurinder, with him, and he said some young person should make a presentation. And Gurinder was also wondering what he's going to say, but on the way he didn't have time to prepare either, but when he went there, he apparently did very well, and he came out with a statement that Sikhs and education are a natural fit. And the reason is Guru Nanak Sahib was the greatest teacher ever born, and he cited some of the Sakhis, how he delivered his message and how effective he was, and so on and so forth. And that kind of got me also thinking about it. And if you think deeply, the education that Guru Nanak started, it really revolutionized lots of things. It made a different community. So there was a social, religious, and political revolution that he launched, and the Sikh Gurus, and so they all participated in it. And in fact, it's because of this reason we later had renamed our school here from Khalsa School to Guru Nanak Khalsa School. So let's look at this now in a little more detail. In Gurbani, about education, we often have learned the statement Vidya Vichari Parupkari. Contemplate and reflect upon knowledge, and you will become a benefactor to others. Also, Gur Prasadi Vidya Vichare Pad Pad Pave Man. By Guru's grace, contemplate spiritual knowledge, read it and study it, and you shall be honored. Now, Gurbani and lives of Gurus, their source of spiritual knowledge, that was their focus. Okay? But we will examine that the methods that they employed for spiritual knowledge, are they applicable to the kind of secular knowledge and the education that we have in schools and colleges, and we will try to understand more. When we look at education, I just broadly, kind of aspects of education, broadly divided them into three parts. One of them is knowledge delivery, how we give the knowledge, how we communicate the knowledge. And the other part is knowledge content. See, keep padhana, what is the education that we are going to give. And then we also want to see, have a measurement, stages of accomplishment, whether we succeeded in doing it or not. Now, in today's talk, I'll talk only about one topic, that's the knowledge delivery, what Gurbani says about it, what we learn from it. I'll come back to the other two topics in maybe another future talk. We can set it up another time. Now, knowledge delivery, there are several things here that come to my attention, and I think you will probably can add more to this list from your knowledge, and I'll appreciate that. Now, first and foremost is use of mother tongue. Education starts, they say, even before the child is born, through the contact with the mother and through his childhood. Now, if we wait for a child to learn a new language before we start educating the child, it's going to cause a lot of delay there. So, using the mother tongue is the most effective way to give knowledge to the child. And of course, that's not kind of against learning other languages. It may be necessary because every language has a lot of richness and information to give us. But the starting education, the initial start, the mother tongue is the best one till the child has learned another language that he needs to learn. The other part is Gurbani makes great use of, it's all written in poetry. So poetry and rhyming has a great role in education. And I should have reprogrammed my cursor here. And highlighter.
You can't go on the hyperlink. You can't go on the arrow.
Arrow options, yeah. I think this is what I need. Automatic visible always. Yeah. It went too fast. Now, the fact that Guru Sahib didn't just give us a text to read, it has significance. Poetry is pleasing to ears, makes education fun, colorful. We all know the nursery rhymes. They increase a child's vocabulary, imagination, and makes it easy to remember facts. Generally, poetry has been used basically for emotional kind of subjects, or what they call is the right side of the brain, and use for left side of brain for where logic is involved and science is involved or reasoning is involved. That side, the use of poetry is lagging. And I think that's the one contribution we could pick from Gurbani, that we could, all the gurus are great poets and they were so effective. So maybe we are missing something by not using poetry enough. Then we look at poetry writing is treated more like a natural gift. Sikh gurus were great poets, of course. I haven't seen very commonly the poetry writing classes. You go to English, they teach you fiction writing, non-fiction writing, and all other kinds of writings, but very rarely a poetry writing class. And that's probably something is missing from the education system, if we look at the Guru's message here, or their methodology. So I was also thinking, can computers be programmed to convert text into poems? That will be very effective because the computers have a whole bank of vocabulary available to them. They have to find the rhyming words and so on and so forth. And trust me, the app will be very useful if you have it. And I could convert the messages I sent to Pushpinder ji into poetry. Everybody could do that and it will be very, very pleasing, right? Okay. And also, if you look at it, Sikhs and Punjabis, I think they have a natural talent for poetry, and particularly it has really blossomed in last few years. Ever since Punjabi music became very popular, we see scores of musicians as well as the poets from Punjab writing excellent poetry, but that's all not being used for education. I think that needs to be redirected somehow. They're all, in fact, some of them are paying money from their pocket to get their cassette or CD made. But I think if we can somehow utilize them for education, that would be very, very fruitful for our system. Now, repetition. Now, in Guru Granth Sahib, each message is repeated many, many times. And of course, and even each phrase or each line of the poetry is repeated many times at the end of a pauri as a sthai or something. So repetition helps in memorization, we all know that. And we all sang all those pahade many, many times when we were young and helped us in memorization. Also, as you repeat something again and again, it deepens your understanding. And Kabir ji has said, Rasri avat jate sil par hot nishan. So repetition really kind of puts that grooves in our brain to memorize it. And also, if you repeat Gurbani, for example, personally I find, I think many will agree, that as you grow, the meaning, deeper and deeper meaning becomes clear to you. Understanding improves as you repeat again and again. And so even Aristotle wrote, it's frequent repetition that produces natural tendency. So this technology or this methodology Guru Sahib has used is very...
I think in the spiritual domain in particular, but also in other areas, repetition is important because it's not only operates at the conscious level, it goes at a deep unconscious level.
Sure.
Same thing you do many times. It becomes just a part of your thinking, so you're trying to transform the perspective. That's where repetition is important. I think poetry and music plays a big role in that.
Big role in that also.
Kind of dynamic,
Sure.
where you're going at a deeper
Yes.
subconscious level.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, there's been a lot of scientific research also into this. There's a one kind of memory, it's typically called associative memory. You try to remember a list and you repeat it many times. Then if you say the first word, the second word automatically comes to your mind. And third word comes automatically to your mind, and so on and so forth as you say those. And so there's an association between the first word and the second word in your brain where they're stored, they get linked. So the moment you say one word, the next one is immediately there. And
more than the repetition, the singing part is the remembering part, I guess.
singing makes it pleasant.
No, that's how you remember it.
You also remember it too. Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to share recently on TV, I profiled a professor. He's from Stanford, right scholar. So there's the Oakland Charter School. So what they're trying to do is they're saying STEM subjects and they're actually very difficult and boring. So this professor, he's helped his students, they're 7th grade students. It's like a rap. So they created a rap around some of the scientific concepts.
Yes.
And they showed his profile, I think it was on 60 Minutes or something. So Stanford, that was very interesting. कि बच्चे concept grasp करने लिए, otherwise you are struggling.
Struggling, हाँ जी.
And because of the medium of music and song, those things are becoming easier. So
I think Punjabis share some of those characteristics too. Bhangra music is so popular, we should exploit it.
ਭੰਗੜੇ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਲੋਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ ਮਤਲਬ ਭੰਗੜੇ ਜਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਮਿਊਜ਼ਿਕ ਉਹਨੇ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਧਰ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਵੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਜੋੜੇ
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਵੱਲ ਤੋਰਿਆ ਹਾਂਜੀ 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 ਪਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਐਜੂਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਵੱਲ ਵੀ ਵਰਤ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਹਾਂਜੀ
ਐਜੂਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤੇ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕਿਸੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਨੇ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਰੈਪ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਗਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਆਨਸਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੀ ਸੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਅੱਛੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੀ
Yeah, I think that does need some discussion. I think Guru Sahib didn't invent too many of the ragas. They were part of Indian classical music already. And then they might have modified it somewhat, but I think they took the ragas that were available. They used the language, the vehicles that were available. To personally, I mean, this will be my personal opinion, somewhat uneducated. It won't be bad or hurtful to even sing Gurbani in other strains of music.
Yeah, I think at that time, ragas at that time were not just used for classical music, they were used for folk song and they sing.
Yes,
And they also include the bars and all the other
yes,
that were not classical and not used for religion.
yes.
They brought them
Into
they were
very open-minded.
very open, very willing to use whatever was popular.
Sure.
And I think we need to be open to that also. We need to preserve our old traditions, but we should also be
Open to new ones.
using
Yeah,
that which is more
absolutely,
for the audience.
absolutely.
I think rap certainly would fit in there.
Hanji.
One of my nephew, he's a doctor, so he told me like that. He thinks the ਸੰਤ ਢਿੰਡੇ ਵਾਲੇ
Hanji, hanji.
ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡ ਕੀਤਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਹੋਰ ਬਾਬਾ ਜੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਮਤੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਚਪਨ ਸੁਣਨਗੇ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਬੜਾ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦਾ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡ ਕਰਦਾ
Yeah, simple language helps. We'll discuss that also.
ਲਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਕਿ ਮਤਲਬ ਸਿੰਪਲ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਉਹਦਾ ਚਲੋ ਗਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਕੀਰਤਨਕਾਰੀ ਕਲਾਸੀਕਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲਾਗੂ ਪਰ ਜੇ ਕੁਝ ਲਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਨੂੰ ਕੁਝ ਜੇ ਯੂਜ਼ ਕਰ ਜਾਵੇ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ
Hanji, bilkul. Bilkul, hanji. We're talking about repetition, so let's go to the next one here. ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਨਾ ਲਾਈਟਿੰਗ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਠੀਕ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਆ ਰਿਹਾ
Page down, just page.
graphical presentation. Hanji. Now, the graphical tools as we know today, particularly with the help of computers, were not available at time of Guru Sahban. But they had great imagination and they used the words to describe things graphically. And I think Guru Nanak Dev Ji is really brilliant in that. And if you read here in the Aarti, गगन में थाल रवचंद दीपक बने तार का मंडल जनक मोती धूप मल्यान लो पवन चवरो करे सगल बन राय फुलंत ज्योति. Moment you read it, the whole scene comes before your eyes as to what he is trying to do. He connects you to the cosmos and nature so effectively. So he was very aware of the use of graphical images that come to your mind when you read something, and I'm sure if the tools are available, he won't hesitate from using them. And then also, for example, in the 27th Pauri in Japji Sahib, Sodar Keha, Sokar Keha, Jitba Sarv Samale. And if you read the whole Pauri, the scene he lays out in front of you kind of shows how much imagination he had and how much kind of pro-graphical he was. Hanji.
Just taking off from what you were discussing earlier on, that rap should be incorporated. But the same thing was rap. I think the softness and the tranquility that Gagan Mekhal produces we lost. So I'm wondering if our anxiety of making us, our children or our young learn by incorporating everything would at the same time lose what was.
But I wouldn't suggest putting this particular thing in rap. But remember, there are others like a lot of people who see these Gurbani that's already in Vichaar and everything that are really different tone, right?
So
So
selection
there are all
in
kinds
terms
of
of
different
what?
tones and different.
Yeah, I think you have to be selective in applying the tools. Even Guru Sahib has, for example, Japji Sahib is not written in any raag.
Jazz
Right.
stuff can be a good rap.
Probably, yeah.
The thing is,
Just praise.
Chardi tradition doesn't use Gurbani. It uses songs, folk songs.
Hanji.
And I think there's nothing to stop us from creating those kind of songs with messages of Gurbani that are done in rap.
Hanji.
But my initial response to Gurbani in rap, because rap is considered, rap has become associated with a lot of vulgarity and a lot of stuff that is not very conducive to spiritual thinking. And yes, we can break that and start a new one, tradition of rap. But I think in the meantime, there are so many different ways of taking the message and portraying it in so many, many different ways. Whether
Yeah, I think,
it's rap or rock and roll or whatever. I think that it's the message that I think our generation and us perhaps should leave some ways of expressing it differently.
You see, I agree with you that it would make more sense to create new words and not try to translate for those kind of things. But on the other hand, in Gurbani, they used bars and other things that were used for very different contexts. And they use it for totally different.
Yeah, I'm just telling you my personal hesitation because of the way the rapids are considered and the majority of the stuff that is rapped.
You know,
That doesn't stop us from.
If I was thinking of using rap, I would do what you said, you create something new. But I was just pointing out that the Guru Sahib did use music that was used in a totally different mode.
Right.
And used it for spiritual things.
And
The bars in particular, they were used for praising kings and for warlike things and totally different context. And they were able to use it for very spiritual, very inspiring things.
So basically the graphical presentation, Amitaji, is that sufficient discussion? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Graphical presentation is very, very important part of education delivery, and picture is worth 1,000 words, as they say, probably. And so Guru Sahib really, I think he knew it, and that's why in many places they use this kind of, through word play, probably the kind of graphical presentation. Now, quantification. If you go through Japji Sahib, there are several pauris in sequence, and Guru Sahib has tried to describe Vaheguru in different ways, and quantification is one of them. He starts with Antana Sifti Kainant, and then he goes to Bhauta Karm Likhya Na Jaye, and then he comes to Amul Gun, Amul Vapar. He's trying to use all kinds of dimensions that we use in our normal life to describe Vaheguru.
And when these examples he's saying can't be quantified.
Exactly, yeah. So he's aware of the quantification part, and it's part of his description, and also, for example, for Vaheguru, things are either zero, infinite, or priceless, or indescribable. Like Sargun, Nirgun, Nirankar, Sun Samadhi Aap. In one sentence, with so many quantifications. Or Tumri Gat Mit. Mit just comes from meter, measurement. Right? Tumri Gat Mit Tumhi Jani. Or Amul Gun, Amul Vapar. So Guru Sahiban they might not have formal degrees, but they were, imagine it's 15th century we are talking about. And they have got quantification is kind of important part of the Gurbani too. So they are very much aware of it, and it's visible there. Now, singing and music. We all know Gurbani is organized in ragas. Now, Kirtan or singing Gurbani is principal mode of worship for Sikhs. Now, modern research also supports that music and mindful singing, it will exercise your mind and improve all aspects of brain. I can send you this picture if you like. I got it from the internet. It describes that what different parts of brain get to play when you are singing. Even your motor skills, when people sing, they start tapping their feet or playing tabla, you moving your fingers with the beat. So all parts of brain participate in when you're singing and with music. So it's a very, very powerful tool that Gurus have prescribed for us. So singing and music is also part of other religious traditions, but somehow the secular education in the universities and so on doesn't make effective use of it. So, and again, Sikhs and Punjabis, they have a great talent for music and singing, and we should see ways to exploit it for education.
You see a lot of people getting knowledge of Gurbani.
Yes.
Very few people really get into knowledge of music in Gurbani.
That is true. Listening and imbibing, practicing. This audience knows Suniye, Maniye is an important part of Gurbani teaching. And hearing is basically physical phenomena. We can hear noises or sounds through our ears, but listening is mindful hearing. So Gurbani lays great emphasis on listening and practicing, Suniye and Maniye. And the same skills are important for education too. Listening improves our mental focus, and practicing builds up the actual skills. So they're required for learning, and gurus are great prescribing these. Use of letters. Guru Sahib comes and says, the importance of letters. Akhri naam, akhri salah, akhri gyan, geet gun ga, akhri likhan bolan ban, akhra sir sanjog vakhan. There's a typo here. So, and letters are the basic elements of reading and writing. And Guru Sahib has talked about the importance of learning these in 15th century. Imagine 15th century society, very few people probably were educated in letters, and he is ahead of probably many scholars at that point in trying to preach that and teach it to the Sikhs to take them ahead. That learning letters, reading and writing is important.
Another thing is letter at that time was limited, like Nati Akri. And then there are a lot of sounds and a lot of interpretation of Bani, is how you read based on that little.
Sure.
This creates that confusion too.
Yeah.
Nowadays the languages have evolved, and it could be what you write, what you get, kind of, you can get it.
Not in English.
English is still limited from that language.
Yeah.
But other languages has evolved.
I think Punjabi is more phonetic than.
Punjabi is more phonetic, no doubt, but still
Yeah.
there is.
I agree with that.
Bani,
Yeah, sure.
So you need to know how to read it.
How to
right.
read it, absolutely. Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah, I think
The
things.
meaning changes with the way.
Yeah, Guru Angad Dev Ji did try to kind of expand and make the script, Gurmukhi script, a little bit more perfect, and few letters were added later on. But you're right, absolutely. Gurbani has its own phonetics that needs to be learned to pronounce it properly.
And I think back then there was Sanskrit, right, which is the language of the scholars, right? People like me would be illiterate for their life, right? So we wouldn't be able to master that language. So Guru Sahib said, it is your language. This is how you speak. This is how you write.
Yeah, I was going to come to that a little bit. Yeah, it's okay.
That's the muse.
Need of a teacher, mentor. Gurbani emphasizes the importance of teacher for spiritual education, and we know it's needed for secular education too. And it says beautifully, Gur Paudi, Bedi Guru, Gur Tulha Har Naam. Guru is the ladder, Guru is the boat, and Guru is the raft to take me to Lord's name. And then he also tells us that without proper knowledge and guidance, even our well-intentioned efforts can be worthless. And like in this, Kalar be just durmat aise, nigure ki nisani, satgur bajo kor andara, do muhe bin pani. It's example of a farmer who doesn't have anybody to guide him. He puts his seed into dry land. Color wali zameen hundi na Punjab vich when the layers of salt formed on the land on the top. You might have seen that cracked land pictures with on top. So color wali zameen de vich you put seed, nothing is going to come. And this has a direct reference also, Guru Amar Das Ji, before he met Guru Angad Dev Ji. He was a very religious man. He came from a religious Hindu family. He used to go for pilgrimage to Gurdwara. And every year he went and he led a group from his village because his father used to do that. And he did it for 21 years. At the 21st year, when he was coming back, he stayed at one of those sarai, some kind of guest house. And somebody looked at his feet and said, the lines on your feet tell me that you will be a great holy man. Okay. I don't know whether that's right or wrong reading, but it turned out to be right. But what happened was another sadhu who was staying there, he became very attached to Guruji after hearing that. And he accompanied him and came and stayed at Guruji's home. And he even ate the food there and lived for a couple of days. And before leaving, he asked Guruji, who's your Guru? Asked Amar Das Ji, he was not a Guru at that time, who's your Guru? And Amar Das Ji said, I don't have a Guru. He said, that's really bad. you made all my life's work worthless. I ate food from you, a guy who doesn't have a guru. And that started Amar Das ji in seeking a path. But on the other hand, if you look at it, he was performing all those rituals of going to Hardwar and back. Whether those efforts were leading to anything or not, he didn't know. So intentions were good, but the efforts were like putting seed on a dry land. So it's important to have the proper guidance to do it. And again, you also need to pick your guru with kind of care. Guru jina ka andale chele nahi thau. So it's important that we pick up a proper guru or teacher even for secular education. Importance of classrooms and Sangat. Now, Gurbani lays great emphasis on company of those who are trying to gain the same enlightenment, same spiritual enlightenment. Vadpagi mil sangati sacha sabd Vichaar. Vichaar means to trade. So, through great fortune, by meeting with Sangat, you trade the true name. And also, Gursikhs pray for the company of Gursikhs. And it's just like students seeking admission to a good university. You have to apply and do all the 9 yards of applications to do that. And so it's important to have the proper company of other kids, other students who are also trying to learn. Tinki sangat dev prabh mein jaachak ki ardas. So picking up improper company, on the other hand, for pursuit of knowledge can be disastrous. There are many universities which are known as the party town universities. And if you happen to be there, chances that you will come out with good educations are small. So you could get into trouble. And the same, of course, Guru Sahib says here for the spiritual education. Bagla kaak neech ki sangat jai karang bikh mukh laiye. So advantages of participation or having Sangat is that participation in class, it increases commitment, enhances focus, and allows us to learn about other perspectives on the issue from fellow students, and enhances learning. And in fact, the teachers learn too from the participative class. You talk to any professor, he will tell you that he's become wiser by talking to his students, and that's the main strength of Sangat and class. So Guru Sahib knew all these things, that what you need. Now learning by questioning, and this was something that Gurdwara was mentioned there in Merced. Guru Nanak Sahib was a great teacher, and he made people learn great lessons by making them ask questions. We don't need to repeat the Sakhis here or question their own actions. You all know the Sakhi at Hardwar, incident at Makkah. You also know when Dunichand, the wealthy man, met Guruji, or the story of Chinehu. He could make people realize the folly of their understanding or misunderstanding by asking questions and then come to the right answers and enlighten them. And basically, in our modern science or modern education, this is called critical thinking. And it's an important part of learning. And in fact, now that I have an educationist at home, I learned that the California school system and the countrywide, they're adopting a new standard which is called the Common Core, which will encourage students, even starting from the level 1, to read things critically. What else could this sentence mean? What does it mean? What else could it mean? And if you read a paragraph, they are asked to interpret it or write it in different words. Similarly, even math, when they solve a problem, it's not they're adding 2 numbers or subtracting 2 numbers. They're asked to think what the process they used. So critical thinking is now being realized that it needs to be encouraged in a more structured way here in the schools. And Guru Sahib had it.
Interesting question. context of spiritual learning, this balance between critical thinking, asking questions, and faith.
Sure.
Listening to what the says, that's an interesting.
Yeah, you know, even in science there are things like that. Like, you have to accept, for example, when you're doing theory of relativity, that the velocity of light is same in all frames of reference.
But you believe that because people have experimented.
That is true, but faith also, people have, they build faith only when they experience it. So, of course the experiments are different, but it's not very different in some sense. Big Bang.
Well, it's more like an assumption.
Pardon?
It's an assumption of the theory.
Sure.
Something like that. And you have to make some assumptions so you can build the theory.
Build the theory, sure.
And the assumptions are made on good guesses, evidence.
Yeah, they are verified through.
It's a miraculous thing to think. Of course, nobody knows that velocity is faster than the velocity of
Light.
But it is somewhat hard to imagine that you could say, you can predict that there will be nothing faster than it.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, that's why Einstein is considered great. And
One analogy can be, you know, we trust that other scientists and others have verified things we don't verify themselves. And we trust that the gurus and sadhus and some others we follow, that they have experience, direct experience.
sure,
And from their experience, we believe that there must be something.
that is true. Absolutely, absolutely.
Some analogy.
In almost science, it's different, right? Because if somebody actually writes a paper or does a verification, there's a whole school of people who will cross-verify before it is accepted. The scientific community will never accept anything on the word of one.
But you know, again, scientific experiments also have errors. They have limitations. So some curve might fit your current understanding and current framework of reference. That's the same again with theory of relativity. Newtonian mechanics explained everything before, but when you went to very high velocities or started dealing with the electromagnetic radiation, I'm sorry, I'm going a little too technical here, the things fell apart. So again, sometimes we are in a small region of our comfort and we don't look outside. Just like that sadhu made Guru Amar Das ji think, what am I doing? I've been going there for 21 years, thinking it's all holy and nice. You have to get out of that frame of reference to see something new. Anji.
But in science there are paradigm shifts, and in faith there aren't any. So I think the critical thinking is that you question, but you don't put it to test.
I think Guru Nanak caused a lot of paradigm shifts. Guru Nanak was born in a Hindu family and he changed the paradigm. No Janeu. That's a paradigm shift to me.
Paradigm shift was the paradigm shift there is from the traditional theory of karma. The
Yeah.
Sikh version where the main thing is we can transcend karma, we can break that cycle. The focus is not on getting a better next life but getting free of it. So that's, I think, a little bit of a paradigm shift.
Sure, yeah. Also, you know, Hinduism believes in that karma kand, that you do good deeds and that's fine, that's enough. But we need Guru Prasad. We need the blessing of Guru to achieve what that spiritual moksha or whatever liberation is.
I think what Amrita is trying to say, if I elaborate, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the paradigm shift with the responsibility and the act of the gurus. For us, acceptance, you know, whatever the guru has said, Jo Gur Kahe, right? Manu Manna is our path as Sikhs. So in science, the questioning is there, right? The experiments are there. In Gurbani, correct me if I'm wrong, what you're trying to say is that we don't question.
Well, if we don't put it to test, I mean, within our religion, there isn't a paradigm shift. Between religions, there might be.
But no, the paradigm shifts have happened. I mean, the gurus or
What was
revolutionaries.
described is what we are following.
Yeah, yeah, we don't
Yeah, I
question.
think there's a place for questioning and critical thinking, which
There
is
is a place,
which
yes.
is our practices consistent with the Guru Guru's message. I
Right.
think we have to be
Right, but
use that
questioning what the
use
guru
common
says.
sense, use
Are we
the-
practicing it correctly? Yes. Right? And who is... Okay, so when we get into that, a lot of people will not will have a debate on who's practicing it correctly. There's such a hierarchy that has been created in Sikhi that what you practice as Sikhi will not be accepted as by someone else as the right way to practice, right? So I think the basic thing is that the Guru's word for us as Sikhs, at least for me, I speak for myself, is the final word.
But
It's the
there's
benchmark.
interpretation. There's always questioning about how you
That's an
interpret it.
internal thing, but it's anything that matches with it. For example, I go to a lot of different workshops and seminars. Art of Living is an example. Everything that is in line with the Guru's message is fine. Anything
But to get that, you have to ask questions, and you're applying your critical thinking to see if that particular one is consistent or not.
Sure, but at the bottom, but at the very basis of it is that what the Guru has said is correct.
But I think we are lucky to have the perfect Guru.
Yes. He has done the questioning. He has done the explanation.
Exactly.
That is the benchmark. That is it. And you know what? I don't understand a whole lot because my knowledge is finite. It's limited. I may never understand it in this lifetime. But what I know is that's just for me. But this is the truth, and that's how I
You're addressing exactly my earlier question: is what is the balance between faith on one side and critical thinking and questioning? And these are exactly the points that you're making.
Yeah, you know, we build up faith based on, I think, intuition that my Guru was right on so many things. On this part, even though I don't understand it, and if this part I don't understand, I better believe my Guru. That is, and there are so many things in life that we don't understand.
And that if a person doesn't understand what the Guru is saying, minimally what you can do is suspend your judgment.
Sure, absolutely.
Instead of passing the judgment, because in many things you want to first understand before you can comment.
Absolutely, yeah.
But there's another thing about the correspondence with science and spirituality. I think the bigger comparison probably is humanities rather than science with spirituality, right?
Yeah, I think the right brain sciences, they are closer to emotional side and what spirituality and then science. I think science, again, I find being a scientist, I find that there's no contradiction really. Scientists are looking for truth too. They're a little more critical than the social scientists.
behind.
They're not behind. I don't accept that. They're very harsh on themselves, and when they're trying to find the truth, as he says that.
Still discovering the truth. I mean, the explorations are still going on, right?
Okay.
So in spirituality, the knowledge base, it's just infinite. And so,
But if you didn't have Guruji say that this is the truth, you would have similar doubts as the scientists have. Okay, except that in science we don't accept a Guru. We accept the real experiment as the exact empirical evidence for everything. So that's the difference, I think, that's between the two. And we want that.
that's fine.
That's fine. Somebody, if you have some experience based on faith, person A may experience it, B may not experience it. Whereas science requirement is that if I can define the conditions of experiment, Mr. A should be able to reproduce it as well as the Mr. B should be able to reproduce it. So there's a little bit of stronger test there that we have apply. But it's again on more mundane things than what the faith does.
Pharmacology, for example, it's placebo.
Sure.
Pharmacology is also science.
Sure.
And they figure out that 37% of the people's responses are based on how,
Sure.
not mechanical.
Sure. Okay, that's it. Hanji, basically, now that US is going to critical thinking of based education, which Guru Nanak gave us a long time ago. We don't follow it, but he gave it to us.
He said, he denied to refuse to wear continue. That's question.
Yeah, he questioned,
He gave the reason why he denied.
Hanji.
But he didn't break down their faith.
Yeah.
Guru Devghar ji saved for the Geneva. Saved Geneva. ਉਹਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਜਿਹੜਾ faith ਉਹ ਤੋੜਨ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ
ਨਹੀਂ ਉਹਨੇ faith ਤੋੜਨ no he
respect for
ਹਾਂਜੀ
ਪਾਣਾ ਹੈ
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
engineer ਪਾਣਾ ਹੈ
ਪਾਣਾ ਤੇ ਕਿਉਂ ਪਾਣਾ ਐਬਸੋਲੂਟਲੀ ਕਿਹੋ ਜਿਹਾ ਪਾਣਾ ਐਬਸੋਲੂਟਲੀ ਹਾਂਜੀ
I think that's the beauty of Sikh.
Right.
ਹਾਂਜੀ now learning by practice you know this is a very enlightened audience here ਪਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਸਾਖੀਆਂ ਪੜ੍ਹਾਉਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ about when Bhai Lehna ji came to Guru Nanak Dev ji ਸਾਖੀਆਂ ਨੇ that Guru Nanak Dev ji asked him to carry a bale of grass which was dirty with water dripping from the fields to his home and we simply think he was just trying to test his faith. I think it's deeper meaning than that. Angad Dev Ji, he was a high caste Hindu. He was a Vaishnav who used to go to Vaishno Devi pilgrimage every year. So when he came to Guruji gave him the spiritual education that we need to not believe in Devis and Devatas, we need to believe in one God to whom all the Devis also pray. He understood, but Guruji also wanted to have him the practice of the dignity of labor, which is a very essential cornerstone of Sikhi, that he should not have a hesitation to do those little things, you know, and he made him do that by practice. Though Guruji's wife questioned it, and he made him even pick up utensils out of gutters, which his own sons refused. He was not testing it, I think he was training him to practice. And I think that's the spirit of Sikhi, you know. And that's what Sikhs have learned, you know, from our gurus, that seva and real practice of things. And that's important for our education too. Again, from Bhai Lehna, education is for everyone. And I think again why Guru Angad Dev Ji did what he did was after Bhai Lehna became Guru Angad Dev Ji, he started teaching young people Gurmukhi script. He's made them do physical exercises and seva and langar. And again, we don't attach much significance to it, but if you think deeply, there is. He chose Gurmukhi script and Punjabi language and not Sanskrit. Because before that, people who got education that learned Sanskrit. And he said, and then it was all a field for Brahmins. He said, no, education is for everyone. So he wanted to use the language, use the script which is learned by everyone. And then and not only for Brahmins. Second one, he prescribed physical fitness for everyone. ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਕੁਸ਼ਤੀਆਂ ਕਰਵਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ. So physical fitness is not only for the warrior class or that caste, but for everyone. And Bibi Khivi ji, his wife, she led the langar and everybody did seva there. And this, again, physical seva is for everyone, or manual effort is for everyone, not only for lower caste. It's a very deep lesson here in these sakhis, that the education, this whole kind of education, wholesome education, is for everyone and not for any particular class. Now, I think I missed one slide. Let me go back. Maybe not. Okay, I have it. Yeah.
Qualification.
We did talk about it.
Well, maybe you have a slide on in Gurbani, there's a beauty and there's appropriateness of words and economy of words. You read a line, it looks like there cannot be
Very succinct. Very succinct.
very succinct.
Yeah, very high level of writing. Yeah, absolutely.
You cannot say, oh, it could have been said like this, or you could have, you know,
Hanji.
this is like so precise and so.
Hanji, absolutely. Now, in summary, you know, I think we started with saying that Sikhs and education are generally never together, but if we examine Gurbani, it's totally reverse. Our gurus were so perfect in the methodology, somehow we have either not learned very well, and I think that's a challenge we have.
I think it's actually, it's not a true statement. I know exactly what you're saying. That's what they used to say in India. But you know, look at the professionals, look at the physicians, the engineers, the entrepreneurs, the business people, even the uneducated so-called taxi driver. I mean, he's an entrepreneur in his own right. The spirit, I mean, he knows how to run his business. So there is an innate
Overall education.
that they have acquired. And I think we don't deserve that reputation of not being...
We don't deserve it, but we
do
have
have it.
We have it. Yeah.
thing is,
So-
somebody told like, I went to Sikh Foundation one time and they said a lot of books on their website.
Yeah.
And the comment the lady told is like, this is one community where we try to sell books. Nobody reads. There are very few readers in our community. As such. Like, we have excellent book published, but nobody would read it.
There are leaders and no power.
Yeah, this was the sentence actually I was looking for myself, as what you said, This is exactly, some Punjabi folks, they have ingrained these traits very, very well. And that's why, you don't generally see a Punjabi beggar, So this makes us successful in every...
Point, a South Indian older man, I heard from him about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And he said he's never seen a Sikh beggar.
Yeah.
This is an outsider from South India.
It's unfortunate there are now.
Now, it's changed
Yeah,
now.
I mean, there's-
Yeah.
No, but I heard from somebody that they created the IIT in India,
Yeah.
in Punjab and Roper.
Right.
All the students are non-Punjabis because they can't find enough
None of them, yeah.
qualified Punjabis to come in here.
None of them. We went.
Yeah, I went there myself and I was there in January. I gave a talk and I was looking at the audience and I couldn't find a single turban. And when I come outside, all the security people are turbaned. I was very disappointed. I think we lack the higher education the emphasis in our lives. But in general, yeah, if you look at the life lessons, Sikhs are great. Our villagers are great. That's why you see this sort of semi-educated people coming here and being so successful, because they have that in them. That the dignity of labor, they can do any work and progress. Yeah, absolutely.
Cases are there, but I think as a community, if you see masses, 70% of people are in villages, 70% of people are not educated, right?
But I'm
So as a
surprised.
community, we are not.
In Roper, you did, in the IIT, you didn't see a single
No.
turban?
I saw turban among the non-academic people.
Oh, in the
Some
students,
service
is
jobs,
that-
no?
Actually, no, the time I went,
You went to Punjab University, I went there, and I think we could have gone to IIT in Punjab.
sure. But we went to,
Not many Punjabis pass that.
the thing here is that, I went, okay, I should correct, I went in the time there was a winter break, students were not there, but all the academic staff was there, research scholars were there, so none of them was turban Sikh. I mean, if there was somebody sitting in audience, yeah,
I think we should look forward to a Nobel laureate with a turban.
yes, we need that.
ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਅਬਾਊਟ ਜਿੰਦਰ ਹੈਡ ਮੈਂਸ਼ਨ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇਵ ਜੀ was best teacher, so again I don't have much knowledge about Guru Granth Sahib, but ਮੇਰੀ observation ਇਹ ਹੈਗੀ ਕਿ if you look at it, Shakespeare was born I think 50-60 years after Guru Nanak Dev Ji. If you looked at the depth of the literature, ਜਿੰਨੀ very limited what I understand, the reason it is so difficult because the literary aspect of Guru Granth Sahib is so advanced.
It's very advanced.
Shakespeare is known ਕਿ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦਾ, sonnet ਹੈਗੇ ਇਹ ਹੈਗੇ, but ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਜੋ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਉਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਤੇ it is even much more advanced than what he wrote.
Absolutely.
And he is widely known, but ਸਾਡੀ ਖੁਦ ਹੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਮਝ ਆਉਂਦਾ and we also don't understand it. But in terms of Tejinder's remark, I think it's absolutely spot on.
He was, absolutely.
Timing and all of that.
Even with Shakespeare,
Yeah.
if you go back now and
Yeah.
read his plays
Yeah.
versus when you read them school age,
School
16,
age,
right?
yes, difficult.
The depth
The
of
depth?
meaning that you discover
Yes.
is way different.
Exactly.
I mean, each line
Each
is so
line is a
nuanced.
metaphor, each
It's
line,
amazing.
yes.
And that's
So our Bani also, it has similes, metaphors, analogies, everything. It's a
Absolutely.
super advanced.
Let me ask you, give me an honest answer. Would you have thought before this talk that the Sikhi and education are connected? I mean, if somebody just asked you.
The Sikhs are supposed to be students.
Yeah, oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Hey, but we are supposed to graduate sometime.
from this perspective that is
The word
so
Taliban also
concrete
means student.
Yeah.
But we must sometimes graduate
I
also.
didn't know that.
It's a similar meaning.
Student. I didn't know that.
Okay, thank you very much. I think,
Taliban means student.
Taliban.
Taliban means student.
yeah, sure.
Well, I want to put in my
Hanji.
that
is a
the
theory and
Khalsa
the
school
practice.
here and the Gurdwara itself, and particularly the Khalsa school, is a tremendous achievement. I mean, humongous achievement. Obviously, you are involved, and there are
There are
teachers.
and so many, yeah, that's right. There's so many sevadars. Yeah,
For the teachers.
yeah.
Some people are uneducated like me, no
I don't know, education is defined by degree.
Exactly, experience.
So knowledge is acquired irrespective of.
Yeah, education is a much broader thing than degrees. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I should also introduce you Dr. Gurprakash Singh. He is moved recently into this area, and he's also doing seva here, trying to start some SAT classes in school. So,
Thank you. मैं एक गल कहना चाहूँगा.
Sure.
You know, I'm sorry I missed ਅਸੀਂ class ਸਾਡੀ ਹੁਣੀ ਖਤਮ ਹੋਈ.
ਹਾਂਜੀ.
ਕਿ ਨਾ ਅਗਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾਏ, ਸਿੱਖ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾਏ ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਏ, there are few things we are at really fault, and I think one thing is we are really poor PR managers. The second is we laugh upon कि भी मैंने आंदा कुछ नहीं, but we are not willing to learn. We just repeatedly make the same thing. Yes, I don't know, but I don't see an effort at a community level learning. And I think that if we are not careful, we have only very short span. If we don't handle the next generation, next 30 years wisely, our grandkids will be cursing us. The only word they will have for us is not polite that we will be able to hear. Because if they discover what Sikhi was by reading a non-Sikh, and they would say, my grandfather, my father didn't tell me, and I blame them. So we carry on our shoulders a huge burden to learn ourselves and then to educate. If your kid is not ready, adopt a kid and teach that kid something from Sikhi, because otherwise this world is not going to excuse you, because Sikhi is marvelous, and it's on us to educate at least each one teach one is my motto, you know.
That's exactly
Yeah.
what the effort is all about. This very small effort, but causes us
Each one we should teach one, at least one, so that after you at least एक कुड़ी नूं पढ़ाओ. You know, मेरी नानी जी कहते होंदे सी कुड़ी नूं पढ़ाया ते 7 पीढ़ियां पढ़ जाणगियां.
Because एक स्टूडेंट है, मैं बात कर रही थी, he just come over, he's a doctor student at Stanford, and he was writing on government and how the government ships in Punjab and relationship is changing regulation. And he slowly moved on to जितने diaspora हैगे ने सारे इत्थे हुण जो असी सब तो माड़े हैं, even though we've come in early 1900s, and it's all tied into how we feel about us.
Yeah.
As a community, you said we make mistakes and we don't put the effort to learn. I think some of it might be because the humility that has been kind of forced on us, which is good, keeps us from going out and claiming, "Ji, assi hai kita hai," ya "Oh hoya."
My analysis is not humility. I think it's arrogance. I think we are very arrogant.
I think so.
We just don't learn.
Yeah.
किसी Christian ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਲਓ, किसी Christian ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਲਓ. You walk with me to San Jose Church. Most of the Christians would have read their Bible. It's us who have not read our Guru Granth Sahib, and we say कि ਅਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਹੈਗੇ ਹਾਂ. You know, I don't know who are we going to answer? We can't look our kids into the eye and say कि okay, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਆਂਦੀ ਹੈ, ਤੂੰ ਬੈਠ ਮੈਂ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਸਿਖਾਣਾ. So we are illiterate ourselves, and we are not learning. We are not even willing to learn. I think ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਆਈ. The basics is we are missing.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
not able to impart.
Yeah, and impart. Do the basics. Don't
Sure.
have to do big fundas, just trying to let your mind.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I'll
Vichaar.
appreciate- thank you, Jay. I'll appreciate-